Sweet. All right, we'll get started here then. Thank you guys for coming back to another week of Everyday Debates. Today we've got another fantastic debate on Israel with some of our hot button issues on the current topic. And this week we have PrimeCayes and Philosophical Zombie Hunter, who are going to be debating on the topic Israel's current response in Gaza should be condemned. Before we get started here, I'll just remind everybody that if you want, you can go to the server shop and become a super supporter, which gives you access to role changes and priority question and comment at the very end of the debate, as well as a few other perks. And if you invite people, I keep track of how many people you invite to the server, which will come with some rewards down the road if you are able to invite enough all on your own. All right, well, with that out of the way, format will be the same as usual. It'll be 4-minute opening statements for both sides. And then we'll just kind of go into a free back and forth. I don't care who wants to start. Perhaps maybe it makes more sense to start with Prime, if that works for you. So if that works for you, then you've got 4 minutes on the clock.
Can PhD start? I think that'd be
Yeah,
better response.
sure. Easy, you want to start?
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm just gonna read this out because otherwise it'll be a bit difficult for me to say it in a different way.
Okay.
So in the morning of the 7th of October, Hamas launched a sophisticated military terror attack on Israel. The terror attack was recorded and live streamed. In it, the world saw terrorists on paragliders kill and slaughter teenagers and young adults at a peace music festival. Terrorists go door to door in towns nearby Gaza, torture, rape and murder civilians in their homes. Terrorists take hostages back to Gaza, including 9-month-old babies and 84-year-old Holocaust survivors. Testimony from recovery teams include identifying a pregnant woman whose belly had been sliced open, her child taken out and stabbed and then shot her as well as her other children in the house. Parents and children tied up together, missing fingers, missing eyes, some beheaded in what seemed to be an act of torture. Pelvis of female adults and girls who were broken due to being raped. Burned bodies at the music festival in towns nearby with ash in their lungs, indicating they were burned alive. A spinal column of an adult fused with a spinal column of a child. It appeared to be a parent and a child bound together by wire as they were burning alive. The carnage was so severe and intense that parents of the kids in the music festival were asked to bring toothbrushes of their kids so that their body parts could be identified using DNA. All these crimes against humanity were live streamed to the world, and it seemed to shake the international view of the conflict. I'm not entirely sure of the reasons, but it seemed the left around the globe has changed position on this, or at least some of the left has changed position on this topic. I'm not clear if it was because that the kids at the Peace Music Festival were probably from the left, probably care about the environment, care about veganism and all that stuff. I'm not sure if the towns nearby that were kibbutzes, were also known as social communes. Those people were very left-wing. They were not right-wing religious settlers. Those were very much socialist, very much some of them pro-Palestinian rights. There was a woman there that was fighting for Palestinian rights. There was a man, and she died. There was a man there that used to take injured kids from Gaza to a hospital in Israel to be treated back and forth. He was killed. There was a man who had a high-tech company. He was hiring people in the West Bank and Gaza and hiring them as developers so that the area could benefit from this increased economic activity. His daughter was killed in the music festival. It also became apparent to the left, in my opinion, that these Hamas fighters were not primitive, or terrorists were not primitive people fighting with rocks and sticks. They were highly trained, highly funded by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, also known as SEPA, and carried out sophisticated simultaneous attacks by land, sea, and air. It is now clear to even the most left-leaning Israelis that Hamas is not interested in peace, and Israel considers this an act of war. We are now 4 weeks later throughout the whole war, and Israel is being on trial. Every step is scrutinized, every claim is exaggerated, every step is considered a war crime against a higher standard than all other countries on earth need to abide by. Seems to be a constant need to delegitimize Israel and suggest to abolish it. In this debate, I will attempt to set the record straight and dispel memes coming out of the far left academia about Israel. To that end, I will make the following 6 claims. PrimeCayes, you may want to write this down. Israel is not an ethno-state. Israel is not an apartheid state. Hamas is a terrorist organization which has been democratically elected to govern Gaza. Hamas initiated the current war unprovoked. Under international law, Israel has an obligation to go after Hamas to prevent future genocides on its people. And number 6, Israel, or the IDF, is the most moral army in the world, according to a British military study based on the Gaza War of 2014. That's my opening statement.
Could you help me out? You were doing that really fast. So, not ethno state, separately Hamas terrorist state, separately Hamas attack unprovoked.
I'll
separately
read
Israel must do.
I'll read the whole thing. Israel is not
Yeah,
Do
an
you have it?
1,
Do you
2,
have
3,
it
4,
written
5, 6.
down,
By
PZH?
now.
If you have it written
Yeah.
down, why don't you just paste it in the chat or something?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, that would be useful too. Thank you so much. I'll just wait to go for that to come through, and then I'll do mine.
Yeah, no problem.
It's in the lounge.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
in the lounge.
I can put it over in there as well if that helps.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So there are 5, not 6. I thought there were 6.
It was my
Oh,
edit. There you
there
go.
are 6.
Yeah. Mhm.
I gotcha. All right, let me copy and paste this. Thanks so much. It's awfully useful of you, PZH, to bullet point your statements like that. It's really kind, actually. Hello.
I wanted to
all.
speed up
My
the
name's
debate for us.
Fair enough. I appreciate it. Hello all. My name is PrimeCayes. I do debates and stuff like that. Panel shows on my channel, twitch.tv/PrimeCayes, PrimeCayes, on Twitch and YouTube. So come and join us. I want to thank Duke here for inviting me on, and PZH, who my first time meeting them. I thank them for being so kind as to have this debate with me. So I'll start there. So is Israel's current response in Gaza, should that be condemned? I think absolutely. I'll take the forward initiative to say I condemn the attack, Hamas's attack against Israel. I don't think that Hamas does not have the should not be able to attack an enemy, but like you attack military targets, you don't slaughter so many civilians. I have some. I don't necessarily trust all of the reports that have come out about like what's happened with Hamas attack, like the 40 beheaded babies, which we've still yet to see any proof of. But I will say that people were slaughtered. People were almost certainly raped and burned alive. I haven't heard that claim actually, but I believe it. I believe it with the amount of destruction that happened there. So I condemn that. But on the other end, what we've seen from Israel in response, it's been intolerable, completely intolerable. I don't hold Israel to a higher standard than other countries, which is a common tactic you've been hearing. Is because, well, as a progressive leftist, I'm very happy giddy to call out other countries, including my own, the USA, for its war crimes. So there's no um, imbalance in my particular opinion. Maybe in others, they are being unreasonable to Israel, but I can only talk for myself. I think Israel is absolutely an apartheid state, absolutely 100%. So I'd be happy to engage with that. Um, is Israel a terrorist organization, or excuse me, is Hamas a terrorist organization? Um, I I think it's a. I don't think. I, I'm not sure how much that matters, but like I would say that there's certainly a organization that is not opposed to using terrorism. So, but whatever. And I'm willing to dig into that. Um, and under international law, Israel has the obligation to go after Hamas. I don't think uh, Israel, I think, has an obligation to its people to defend them from death, from harm, and to end that immediate threat. Past that, I think that's different. And the most moral army, yeah, the idea that Israel is the most moral army in the world, I've encountered this as well. I don't actually care, right? So, like, if we put this Israel on a scale, right, and we look at all these other um, you know, either we can just look at democracies, for instance, right? Just look at modern democracies, and we can like judge the amount of death and destruction or the tactics that they've used. We can do that, right? And we can say Israel is number one, kindest. Sure, that doesn't excuse the massive amount of uh, death that they are causing right this second. Like, I don't care if they were moral in the past. I don't care if they're number one. That doesn't mean anything to me. And I don't think it means anything to the Palestinians if that was the case. So I think it's just pointless. All right, so I'll just leave it there. Let's get started.
Sweet. So now we can just go into a free back and forth. So, easy if you want to kick it off, or if you guys want to just kind of go piecemeal through those points you have, that I'm fine with that as well. So, but you can go for it.
I have a question just to start off. I need to understand your position on Hamas. Are they firstly the legitimate representation of their people, or the people of Gaza?
That's a tough question. Since they haven't had any recent elections. But I think that it would be dishonest to say that they're not. So I'll say that since there is no other alternative, yeah, Hamas is probably the legitimate, as legitimate in quotes, as legitimate as that might be for elections that haven't taken place in X number of years, and with a highly armed organization that, as far as I know, doesn't take too kindly to talk back. But yeah.
Let me rephrase. Is there a large division between state and society in Gaza?
From my understanding, that there is, I think there's like a generational divide as to what to do, from the Palestinians. So, Palestinians are not or Gazans. To be more clear, Gazans are not a monolith. So, my understanding, there is a
No,
difference.
sorry. In the Gaza Strip specifically, is
Yes,
there
the Gazans, yeah.
is there a division between state and society? As in, let's take Iran for example. Iran the society has a very wide divide between the state. There's constant riots there. There's constant desire for revolution. There's an active participation of society to try to overthrow the government for many years now. Is that the case in Gaza Strip?
I haven't heard of uprising there, but it. I don't think we can compare like Iran to Hamas, the Hamas situation in Gaza, right? Because
Just the level of resistance from the people, but not anything else.
I don't just level resistance from the people. Uh Sure. As far as I know, and my understanding could be incomplete, but as far as I know, I don't hear of mass protests or anything against Hamas. But like again, I think these things are unequivocal, and I think it hides more than it reveals. But yeah.
Okay. My next question, I guess, would be from what you said. It's I'm paraphrasing, but tell me if I'm paraphrasing incorrectly. Please let me know.
Sure. Go ahead.
You condemn Hamas because they overdid it, but they are a legitimate resistance force for the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, they're a legitimate resistance force. As whatever that means as legitimate, but like they are a resistance force. But certainly, again, I condemn the attacks on civilians and whatnot.
Okay, if the attack killed 1/10 the number of people, would you still condemn it?
I mean, if they were targeting civilians, then yes, I would condemn it. Like I condemn the death of one individual person, but yeah. But like if for instance, it was the case, and some are making this argument. I don't know because I wasn't there, so I cannot make this active argument myself. But is that Hamas was actually targeting military targets, and that people were caught in the crossfire? I don't know if there's any evidence to say that is the case. But uh, even then, like. Um, you can criticize their execution and say that because you botched this execution, there's no way I can support the result.
I see. So they overdid it, basically. Just to simplify what you're saying.
The targets that should be legitimate targets are the military.
Okay.
So attacking military and maybe institutions of the state would, depending on what those might be, are legitimate targets. Yeah.
Okay, you said you didn't say on this debate, but who do you consider a civilian in Israel? Putting military targets as military bases aside, who do you consider a civilian?
Sure. So, and I've made this argument in previous debates that I think that settlements, for instance, and they are an aggressive act against Palestinian individuals. But that doesn't mean that anyone within that settlement is an active target, right? So, but I think that like settlers who attack Palestinians, I think they are legitimate targets. Civilians are. I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe that.
No, I understand. I understand. Would
Okay.
you say that
Sure.
there were settlements? Are there settlements the way you're describing around the Gaza Strip?
Would I say say it again, please? I'm sorry.
So Kibbutz Be'eri, Kfar Aza are those settlements around the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, the kibbutz is from my understanding, wouldn't count. I don't know all the targets that were hit, but from my understanding, like the places that were hit wouldn't fall under this. But even again, even if they were some like the most aggressive, egregious settlements that Israel has to offer, and there are a lot of those, that doesn't mean that you can just slaughter the civilians there out of nowhere.
Okay, I'll move on. You said Hamas can legitimately target military objectives. Technically, it cannot. It is a terror organization under international law. It cannot target anyone. Anything it does is unlawful.
It is a terrorist organ. I think that like we in the United States labeled like uh, fighters for the ANC, African National Congress, in South Africa. They had a military wing. I don't remember what it's called. I always forget. But they had like a military wing, and we called those people terrorists. So international law.
let me rephrase. Let me
Yeah,
let me
hold on.
let,
Let me finish my statement,
go
please.
ahead.
They were targeted as terrorists. So I can there may be international bodies that call them a terrorist, but that doesn't that makes no difference when you're doing like a revolutionary. So there you go.
Sorry, that was my bad. Yeah, I just have on two laptops here. So I did hear what you were saying. So I would say this. So it's not the case that this is an army versus army situation. If Hamas was, first of all, Hamas isn't a legitimate entity. It's not representing a state that it is defending. That's one. If it were to represent a state that is defending, let's say, there used to be a state. That state was invaded, and it's protecting that state in other wars in Europe at the moment. Then it would have to follow international law. It would have to sign certain agreements about how war is conducted. It has not done that, and in fact, it not only has it not done that, it does the opposite of the international laws of war. It actually seeks out those laws and tries to find other countries like Israel that are abiding by those laws and using them abiding by those laws as a weakness to then violate. So Hamas doesn't have, it's not a resistant force from international law point of view. It cannot target neither the army or civilian. None of them are something it can do. The only thing it can do is surrender to the United Nations or some kind of international body, lay down its arms, and admit to and proceed to prosecution.
That's a very interesting interpretation. So Hamas not representing a state. This is true. Hamas doesn't represent a state. Well, why don't they represent a state? Because of Israel. Because Israel is an occupying force. Because Israel stole their land. Because Israel is terrorizing them. Controls the resources that goes in and out of their territory. They don't control their own borders. They don't. They are like a caricature of a state. And that's putting it in the most optimistic sense, right? So like the enemy that they're fighting is the reason they don't have a state. You say that it's not an army versus army. Absolutely agreed, right? This is I don't want to say ragtag because these people are more organized than that. But this is a revolutionary force within this territory that must that must fight an enemy that far surpasses it in strength and in funding and international support. So the like for instance, the fact that Hamas is embedded within the population is something that's brought up often. Well, they have to. They can't have a standing military base because Israel will level it. Like there's no way, and they don't have a way to like equally respond. Like, okay, well, we'll just take our F-16s donated to us by the United States, right? We'll take those and we'll just bomb specifically with smart bombs Israeli bases. That's like not an option for them. So of course they're going to be embedded with the population. There's literally nowhere else for them to be. So and then you said, and this might just been a turn of phrase that you used, right? But you said at Hamas, this organization tries to find states like Israel, right? You said something along those lines. And that sounds weird to me because it's like it's like Hamas are just picking targets willy-nilly and just landed on Israel for some reason. Like, who knows, right? And they're like, you know what? Those Israelis, they're governed by international law, but we're not governed by international law. So we're going to pick on those guys. We can understand that that's not the case. But that might just been a turn of phrase that you used that was a bit awkward. So, putting it out there. But
So the turn of phrase that I used at the end, I wrote down your points. The turn of phrase that I used at the end was that Hamas looks for, I guess I'm not saying other states, but looks for the laws that everyone else needs to follow, and tries to use that as weaknesses against those states or countries. So it does the opposite of abide by international law. But I'll go over the points that you raise. So in terms of the Gaza Strip where Hamas is governing, that is Israel left that in 2005. If it wanted to have a state, if it said, you know what, we want to put our weapons down, we want to focus on the economy and improving the standard of living of our people, then they could have. They have 3-star hotels, they have many nice restaurants. There's a part of Gaza where you can buy very nice gold trinkets. There's very nice restaurants. It's a beach. The whole thing is a beach area. They could very easily have made it like a big tourist attraction. I'm talking about 2005, not current time. But let me just continue. So they could have chosen to do that, and they could have chosen to declare themselves a state. No one would have had an issue with that. In fact, Israel is hoping that the Palestinian, both in Gaza and the West Bank, do declare a state, so we can have like drawn lines and we can agree on security. Occupying force cannot be said about the Gaza Strip. There is no, I mean, maybe today in this war, but prior to October 7th, there wasn't any people inside the Gaza Strip. There wasn't even any Jews inside. There wasn't any settlements. There was nothing. It was a Jew-free, 100% whatever the Palestinians want to do and the government want to do zone. With regards to border and blockade, I don't think there's any serious country or international lawyer that would say that Israel shouldn't have a blockade just to protect its own citizens. It's completely irrational to suggest otherwise. So the borders and the blockades were there to protect the lives of the country, of the people in Israel. If Hamas chose not to engage in those, and the borders were only placed up after Hamas fired rockets into Israel, sent terrorists into Israel, sent suicide bombers into Israel. Then, after a long time, those borders were erected. So it's a irrational claim at the very least. Now, you said that Hamas must fight. I mean, I gave a scenario where they don't have to fight. They can just live a good life, have peace with their neighbors. The blockades will go down because they aren't initiating any rockets or any terror attacks. And you can have a, peace for peace, trade for trade kind of relationship with Israel. And you also mentioned, this is a point that I would like to ask you further, have to embed themselves into the civilization. I'm not exactly sure why you're for human sacrifice, because they're essentially like using humans to protect their rockets, to protect their soldiers, and some of them may get caught up in the crossfire, or maybe intentionally used to prevent Israel from launching a particular missile attack because there's just too many people there. So they are putting them in harm's way. I don't see why you're saying that they must do that. Obviously, like you're saying, well, it's one of the tactics that they can use, but why should they use that particular tactic, and why should they put the people that they're supposed to protect in harm's way?
Okay. So, like I don't know. I think this is like a really simple point, but it it's one that just never seems to, like, the other side doesn't seem to get across. Okay, so there are hostilities between Hamas and Israel, right? The idea. And now we can we will go over like the reasons for those hostilities. But those hostilities exist. We just take that as a baseline. Those hostilities exist. And that Israel is a far superiorly equipped enemy. Hamas exists within a status that like of being underfunded, under-equipped, and completely outmaneuvered because Israel almost completely surrounds it. So, like the tactics necessitate that they operate somewhere. That somewhere is going to be cities. Now, I'm not a fan of that. Certainly not, right? Like, if we, well, I don't want war to begin with. It's not a thing that I like. So I'll put that out there. But if there's going to be a conflict, and we have to take up positions, right? Like, I am part of a conflict against the superior power, and I've taken positions. Then, yeah, I'm going to be within the civilian population. If I can't have a standing army, if I can't like reliably have a military base, those things will just be like wiped out by that. That's how these type of battles go. And that I mean, I'll leave that there for now. So, a fan of human sacrifices? Absolutely not. I want peace. I want peace now. I want peace right this second. But I understand that's not going to happen, and so I get it why Hamas does it. But I'll just leave that there. So,
should I reply or do you want to continue?
All right, you can reply to that, and now I have other things I was going to apply to, but you can reply to that if you want. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not entirely satisfied with the answer, and there seems to be a contradiction as well.
Okay.
Obviously, if you put, so let's talk about international law for a second. If you fire rockets from a civilian population, and let's say it's next to a children's school, okay? Now, if there are certain laws of war that says there needs to be some sort of utilitarian calculation. It says based on the missiles that are fired, how much damage will they do to the other side, and then if it will potentially kill 100 people and there's 10 children around the rockets, or like, I don't know, 20 meters next to the rockets, then it is a valid use of international law to bomb those rockets and stop those rockets, like including if those children die. It's just the way it is.
Sure.
And I would see that as human sacrifice. So if there was, like, let's say 100 children or 200 children next to the rockets, then maybe there would have been a different utilitarian calculation. But it's still human shield, human sacrifice. Same to me, it's the same thing. And I would need like a better answer with regards to that. Like, you can do other things, or you can just not engage in hostility, which you may need to expand on for my benefit. But there could be other ways, or just not engage in war. Like, you don't have to be hostile. There are better options to serve the people of the Gaza Strip than this. You can even make an argument that this whole war isn't serving the people of the Gaza Strip. With regards to underfunded and unequipped, though, I will have to disagree. It may be the case that they're not getting like sophisticated laser guided Iron Dome thing that bring down rockets. But the Palestinians in general are the most not well funded, get the most aid per population than any other group on the planet. Specifically, Hamas get funded between 150 and 170 million dollars a year by Sepah, by Iran's Revolutionary Guard. For this operation that they carried out on the 7th of October, Sepah trained 500 Gazan Hamas, PIJ, PFLP fighters a year in advance. They brought them over to Iran and they trained them. They supplied them with anti-tank missiles, anti-APC missiles, certain long-range rockets. So Iran is very well funding, or at least to a very strong degree. They are funding, they are training, they are coordinating these things for Hamas. So I wouldn't say necessarily that that is the case, that they are throwing sticks and rocks as my presentation has said. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's well, before I respond to it, let me get clarification. So you're saying that per the Gaza population, it is extremely well funded, like, in relation to that.
So Palestinians in general, so both Gaza and the West Bank, in terms of receiving aid,
Okay.
by far they're like the top in the world per, like if you divide by population, the top in the world, or somewhere up
Okay.
there.
I'm sure I haven't done that math, but that math is completely irrelevant. That's like a weird statistic to use. Like, so when I'm saying that this battlefield is uneven, I'm talking about the tools available, right? The resources that they have, which includes literally space, and the ability to control your territory, and weapons. Training, I do understand that they get a certain level of training, but that like if you if you divide this among this dollar amount among the population, it says that there is some sort of parity here. Clearly that isn't the case, right? So if there is a group within the United States that wants to do war against the country, and some foreign power gives them like in this the group of 20 individuals, right? And the foreign power gives them $20 billion. Holy crap, they're well funded. Yeah, amazing. That doesn't mean that they have the resources, the manpower to actually put up any sort of threat. So I like it's just a very odd statistic and very pointless in my opinion. So I'll leave it there. Um, yeah. So I guess there was the other option of, hey, well, we'll give you. Why don't you just create a state? You were saying that, why don't they make this a paradise for, well, I don't think you use the word paradise, but Hamas should make their territory habitable, and um, a tourist attraction, um, and simply put down their arms. Well, it seems to me that the um, the harm is like isn't there is no end to the harm that's being done. So like um, the um, I'm sure there were times, right, within the past that another path could have been taken. I've made this criticism of Israel, but I'll make it over of Hamas and any other force as well, any other militant force. That there were moments that they could have made better choices, and that we could have arrived at a better position. Unfortunately, those things didn't happen, and we are where we are. um, we can look at uh, the efforts of the people, though, right? So, for instance, there was the Great March of Return in Gaza that happened from 2018 to 2019. This is like a year and a half, right? There was a great many people thousands, Gazans who marched up to the wall, right? Well, not to the wall, but a buffer zone there. But they protested, they demonstrated peacefully, trying to get attention to their plight. The IDF responds by using snipers against those peaceful protesters. They said, well, we are mostly targeting major insiders of this situation, right? And insiders were people with megaphones who were like facing the audience and, hey, let's leading them in chants, right? Those were insiders. Israel had the IDF had a policy or a strategy of shooting knees, where they just like shot the knees of these protesters, just aimed for them. And we have testimony of soldiers saying that they were blowing off the legs of these protesters just cause. And uh, uh, all in all, my understanding is 200 and like 220 or so people died in that during those protests, and thousands more were injured, maimed permanently. I mean, there's pictures of people on crutches now because they lost a leg, and that like IDF soldiers were also targeting ambulances that came to help pick up people. So that's the response that Israel has when there is a popular peaceful uprising. Um, the UN says, and I'm almost done. The UN says that back in 2015, that Gaza would be uninhabitable by 2020, right? That the conditions were just worsening to the point that by 2020 it would be uninhabitable. We're in 2023, and in 2023 we see that other parts of the Arab world are trying to just kind of forget about this problem. They're trying to push this aside. Saudi Arabia, chief among them, who opening ties with Israel, diplomatic ties with Israel. And so, within this context, Hamas understands that they're losing allies, that their plight isn't going to get better, that Israel isn't interested in negotiating with them, especially of their terrorists, right? Israel calls them terrorists all the time. They're not a legitimate force, right? So there is no improvement happening here, and so like they have a military strike, or they have a militant response, and so that's where we're at. That there is an effort by the people for peace. Hamas is a has a political wing that um, can I believe can be negotiated with, but there's nothing happening here, and the rest of the Arab world is forgetting about them, and so it necessitated a response, a horrible response, but that's what happened. I'll leave it there because I said a lot.
Yeah, okay. So firstly, I completely don't accept the what you've said about the 2019 riots next to the fence. But before I get to it, what I know, so I have to say I mostly prepared for what's happening right now in Gaza, and not so much in the past for that for other wars. So my response may be limited. However, you haven't, before I do that, you haven't specified why there are hostilities between Israel and Hamas, or the motivation for Hamas to attack Israel. You have not gone into that, which is important.
Sure.
And when I said, for example, that in 2005, when Israel gave the Gaza Strip to the Palestinians, the desire of everyone around, including of Israel and every other country in the UN, that they would make this strip the Singapore of the Middle East. It could have had huge potential, but instead of focusing on that, and they still have some, tourism. I mean, not they have hotels, they have, you can see Maybachs and Mercedes driving up, not now, but driving up and down certain areas. There's certainly a rich area to Gaza, but instead of focusing on improving the economic situation of Gaza, Hamas just built terror tunnels all the way from 2010. There was an IDF briefing just today about several hospitals, I think the Indonesian hospital, which basically some Indonesian NGOs were asked to build, funded the hospital, and Hamas told them, build it here. they instructed them to build it above the terror tunnels, or the base of the terror tunnels, as they were being built. And you can see like shots from satellites about the special arches that they used to build those terror tunnels out and displayed on the outside before putting them in the ground. So they've always had this intention of building terror tunnels, building terror infrastructure to attack Israel. It was never on the cards, and it's very evident today that there was ever any hope for peace with Hamas. So they could have chosen to improve the lives of their people, but they had a different motivation that I'm going to have to ask you to get into. I also don't accept the situation where Hamas and Israel and the IDF has to be equal for some reason. I don't see why that should be something to aim for or to strive for. I mean, they don't have to attack. We don't have to have a war. You didn't go into why that is. But I would say that the reason for this particular attack on the 7th of October is very much like what you said about Saudi Arabia normalizing peace relations with Israel, with the Abraham Accords. There are a collection of Sunni Arab countries that are moving towards the American side of the fence here. They want to recognize Israel, that it's a legitimate state, and reduce trade barriers, normalize relations. And Iran, who decided to run this attack, didn't like that. Didn't like that Israel would be just allowed to exist by other Arab countries. It is not interested in that. It is Iran being an Islamic state, Islamic as in the political side of it, cannot accept that there's like a non-Muslim country on the potential caliphate of all the other Arab countries together. That's just too much for them. So they did initiate that strike. Nothing to do with the example you gave about the 2018-2019 riots. It wanted the normalization to stop. So that was the reason for the attack on the 7th of October. There's article in the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal actually, that explains the whole thing. A lot of these things are being discussed. It's not the case that it's a Israel-Palestinian conflict. It's a wider Arab, like Israel with other Arab country conflict. So, for example, the way that this was staged on October 7th, besides training Hamas members and other members in specific in Iran, there was a coordination between Sepah, Hamas, and Hezbollah. Hezbollah, from the summer of 2023, started to move rockets towards the southern border of their southern border towards Israel, and Israel focused more on that activity, and Hamas reduced its terror activities during this time. So they were supposed to distract Israel in that sense. And bear in mind, on the 8th of October, Hezbollah fired rockets onto Israel, meaning they had everything up and ready for that attack. So it's very much like a coordinated attack on Israel, funded, trained, planned by Sepah. Nothing, no other reason. Now, Hamas, from their point of view, they're getting funded by Iran. They're happy to take this money. They didn't expect Israel to start a war. They expected that if they have the hostages, Israel would just have to negotiate. If Israel has to negotiate for 200 and something hostages, the prisoner exchange with Gilad Shalit was one soldier, a live soldier, for 1,020 Palestinian. So these are terrorists which are in prison in Israel for terrorist activities. So they wanted to get 80,000 prisoners for this 200 and something hostage exchange. Then, from their point of view, they would look like the heroes of the Palestinian people. They would then replace the PLO in the West Bank. This is me assuming, by the way. They replace the Palestinian, the PA in the West Bank, and then they'll have access to all the money that's coming into Israel for the Palestinian cause in terms of like the UN, all the other NGOs, the EU and stuff like that. And then they would continue attacks on Israel. And whenever like Israel fights back, they would ask all the NGOs, please complain about international laws being broken and accelerate the lawfare side of this argument, of this war, so that you can either stop Israel from ruining our terrorist infrastructure, or the lawfare will get to such a degree that it declares Israel an apartheid state, and other countries have to attack it. So that's currently the plan, as I see, on the chessboard that's been started. But they didn't expect Israel to start a war.
Okay, so I brought up the Great March of Return to simply say that um, there are peaceful actions that are happening in Gaza. That the people weren't just sitting there quietly while things were happening around them, and Hamas was doing things, and IDF was doing things. That there was this great movement that happened for around 18 months, as far as I can tell, um, where the people like made this beautiful protest, and the response was violence from the other side. And you call it a riot. It's interesting. So we can start trading like sources back and forth on that one. But organizations have looked at this, and they have stated, yeah, this was a peaceful, a peaceful protest.
Sorry,
I'm sure
can I
someone.
just can I just ask before you go into that? Can you just say why in general is Hamas at war with Israel or attacking Israel?
Sorry, hold on. I'll get to that. I haven't forgotten about that. Okay. So, like that's important context, right? Because I think as Westerners, we don't get this in fact, many people don't know. I've brought this up a few times, the Great March of Return, and people literally don't know it even happened here in the West. So that's important context, right? Like they hear when they hear of Palestinians, they hear of Hamas, right? They hear of conflict, but they don't hear of peaceful marches. So that's like extremely important context to have. Um, when it comes to, oh yeah, you talked about the like why does Palestine and Israel have to be equal within this conflict? I wasn't saying that they have to be equal. I'm saying that it's because they aren't equal that or Hamas and the IDF because they aren't equal. Like this um is important context for why they do what they do. Now, if you give me specific examples of like where they may have weapon caches and weapon placements in relation to civilians, right? I can condemn any one of those. And I will, right? Like, hey, if you have this near your school, we can imagine that there's going to be a certain number of casualties when Israel, the IDF, inevitably responds. So I can just state that, of course, right? But I'm saying that within the overall context, this is what that looks like. What we get here in the West is just that, oh yeah, Hamas just uses human shields, and they're some sort of barbaric force that doesn't seem to care at all about the people in which they come from. Because isn't it some sort of like alien third party force that was plopped into Gaza? No, it's made of people who've decided to join for all kinds of reasons. Some of them radicalized and have awful goals in mind. But the reasons why they do what they do makes perfect sense in the larger context. But why is Hamas, in conflict with Israel? But because they want, well, one of the things they want is simply to allow their people to return to lands that were taken from them. That there are people alive who were driven out of those lands, like still alive, because this isn't ancient history. They were driven out of those lands during Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign. So that has never been redressed. The settlements continue to grow in the West Bank, and there is no resistance, no effective resistance happening there. There has been no uh, uh, movement, no real movement. of the political situation, which is what I was trying to illustrate previously with those Arab nations who do see, of course, they see their leadership in which way sees a great advantage of partnering with Israel if it will give them closer ties to the West, access to markets that they don't have. Um, there's all kinds of good reasons to ignore this, right? Ignore people that isn't technically your people. You just kind of have some sort of kinship with. There's all kinds of reasons for the elite in those countries to move away. But as we see now, in response to these attacks, the people of those nations have a different opinion. And yeah, I'll leave it at that for now and your response.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to really ask again. So I really need to know why Hamas is attacking Israel, and I'll give you a hint. It's the same reason why the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt don't like Israel, and the same reason why the Islamic State of Iran don't like Israel. Bearing in mind these three entities that I just described, they come from the same place. So the Muslim Brotherhood was from the
You
40s.
have you have an idea as to what you think it is. I'd be happy to hear it, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I
Well,
can
let's
engage
do
with
it that
that.
way. So PCH, why don't you
Yeah.
tell us what you think the answer is, and then see if Caius agrees.
Well, the answer is simply written in their charter that they are a religious organization. They don't want Israel to exist. Israel existing is against Islam. Islam is in the not the sorry. When I say Islam, I don't mean people praying at home or going to a mosque. That's not what I mean. I mean Islam as a political, or the elements of Islam that could be political or geopolitical. Israel is right there next to a bunch of 20 Arab countries, and those Arab countries tried on 3 occasions through war to get rid of it, and they couldn't. And Islam is the political Islam is supposed to take over the world, put everything in Sharia law, and so on and so forth. And here on their own backyard, there is a small tiny thorn in their side that doesn't let them even start that process. So they don't want Israel to exist, just not exist. Land is irrelevant. It's not. You can make the claim for land if it was more like the Palestinian Authority, and there are more secular nationalist movements, so you can make that claim. But in the case of Hamas, they are religiously against the idea of Israel existing.
Okay. All right. So this is a really important point. I'll say this about any conflict, right? That no conflict is about just one thing, right? Like, even if you talk about, for instance, like the terror attacks that happened in the United States, 9/11 terror attacks, right? And the response that happened afterwards. You would be remiss to say it was about one thing. It wasn't just about like the people dying within those attacks, right? Like when we had these um, when a war breaks out, it's rarely ever, as far as I can tell, ever really just about one particular thing. Now, is it true that the Iranians have, or the Revolutionary Guard and the elites there, that they have a religious intolerance for the state of Israel? Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Yeah. Um, uh, well, is that true of other nations there? Yeah, sure. I mean, if you have a theocratic governmental structure, then 100%. Theocratic governmental structures don't like other religions. Period. Right? Don't like competition. Um, and they tend to respond violently to that competition. 100%. Does Hamas share in those goals? Like, is there an ideological strain of that within Hamas and its responses? 100%. I'm sure. But let's not lose track of what else is at stake. Well, what's at stake is that these people in Gaza are refugees, right? That this is like a concentration camp where you've concentrated. And concentration camp simply means that you concentrate in ethnicity, some sort of minority or whatever within the space, right? You've concentrated them there and made it impossible for them to return. When they were expelled, there was a general sense within the region and the world, well, that eventually they'll get to come back. Even when Palestinians were being evicted, like during the ethnic cleansing, the violent ethnic cleansing campaigns that were happening, decades ago. Like some of these people, like literally didn't even barely packed, right? Because they thought, "Oh, I'm gonna be back." But that's not that's not what happened. And the fact that they not only moved the population, but didn't allow them to come back, that's the crime. That's the crime. That's the ethnic cleansing. And until we can redress that, redressing it might look like a number of different ways, right? But until we actually address that, then the conflict isn't over. Of course it isn't. How could it be? When you have so many Palestinians living, in neighboring countries in a desolate state, the conflict's about that. When they're living in like proper refugee camps in neighboring countries, that's what the conflict is about. And in the West, here, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? But in the West, there is a sense. In fact, I literally just had a debate on this on Thursday, right? And an individual, not Israeli, not Jewish or anything like that, a Black American, he tells me, "Oh yeah, this is a religious conflict." In so many words, he tells me that. Well, yeah, that has to do with something. We can draw lines. We can make some inferences, and certainly there'll be words on both sides about how awful the other side is on religious grounds, and like horrible insults thrown their way and sentiments. But this is a territorial dispute, a dispute about resources, and so that needs to be addressed. And so, like, let's not pretend otherwise. I said a lot. Go ahead.
Right, so at the start of this debate, I said that I'm gonna clear up the memes from like far left academic, I don't know, buzzwords. So I'll start with that. It is though a religious conflict in the case of Hamas. There's no doubt about that. You can read their charter. Even if Israel were to double the size of Gaza Strip, double the West Bank and everything, the fact that they would agree to sign a peace treaty with Israel, that violates already what Hamas wants to achieve. So Hamas would just say, and they have said in the past, we don't agree to your we are not part of your peace agreement, no matter which one of the many peace agreements that was done during the years. They always said that we are not included in your peace agreement because it's just against what they want to do. Just quickly on the memes, Gaza is not a concentration camp. Refugees is only for the first and second generation, not third and fourth. That's a status that the UN for some reason is keeping for Palestinians, but it's not. Technically, after some time, you are no longer. You can't be a refugee for 75 years. That doesn't make any sense. There was no ethnic cleansing campaign. There is literally no documented instructions anywhere in the very well documented period where in the 40s and 50s, where everything was written down on the side of Israel. You can ask your friend Aristocracy, I forget the name. Aristocracy. There's literally no documentation that says we are doing an ethnic cleansing, we are kicking them out. You can find maybe some of historians will say, and I can agree to this, that they say actually they left, they ran away, but we can't let them come back, because then when the other countries, this was during a war, when the other countries are attacking, they would support these attacking countries. So that was something was decided. Now bear in mind Um, the original people who moved to Israel were both from the left and the right as well. If there was a suggestion for an ethnic cleansing, people on the left would not agree, and the Zionists, the beginning Zionists, were largely secular. The religious came much later. The idea of Zionism proper was to have a ethnically Jewish state, a national state, because at the time everyone else around them was becoming to be more and more national. Countries in Europe were becoming to embrace the idea of nationalism. Arab countries becoming to embrace the idea of nationalism, including Pan-Arabism. So Israelis felt they need a country of their own, but Israelis themselves the Zionists were not very religious. The fact that they even wanted to go to Israel is kind of like violating some sort of. It's a long story, but never mind. They were much more secular than religious. With regards,
I agree with you that initially it was a secular movement, but so I stipulate that. Go ahead.
With regards to the religion side, I can make in proving that it's religious. I can make the two following claims. So I already made one claim that even if you double the size, it won't matter. It will still be against what Hamas wants. And I can make another claim to prove that it is religious. I can say if we keep everything the way it is, like the borders are up, the fight, like maybe stop the fighting, but everything the way it is, like on October 6th, but for some strange reason, everyone in Israel decided to convert to Islam, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict would be done, would be finished that day. There would be no more conflicts. The UN would withdraw. All the stuff it will be just like nothing. Like it will just be nothing. And you can ask Muslim friends about this hypothetical. Please let me know if I'm wrong. One point I do want to go into, and this is important for the way that this war is being conducted and the topic of the debate. We do have issues of human sacrifice or human shields, as I call them sacrifice. You can call them shields. Why is it that Hamas is able to tell its population to be human shields, to be suicide bombers? How are they getting the population to do those things?
Okay. Oh, sorry. Is it my turn? I was waiting. Okay. So, a lot of interesting things were said. Not a refugee. Once you reach third and fourth generations, that's just it. Now, I maybe I could agree with you if these people were like properly settled, but these people like don't have a state. Like Palestine is a state. Hamas, the Gaza itself isn't a state. And so like where did these refugees settle to? They are in a refugee camp, right? Concentration camp. But a refugee camp. And their movements restricted. So I think I see the logic that you're going for. That there are various diasporas of that are simultaneously happening of different groups, right? And it would be weird. I don't know if we talked about, I guess, the not Quakers, no Quakers maybe, I don't know. But the like the religious groups that came over from Britain to America and said like, well, those people who have been here for centuries and were well established within this community and have political power here, and are fully integrated within the society, and those people are refugees. I would agree with you there if that was the argument that you were making. Or at least those were the circumstances in which your argument existed, but those aren't the case. The Gaza is this is in itself, its existence as it stands today is a crime against humanity. And these people like aren't accepted. Many other countries don't even want to accept them, and they can't even leave. They don't have that freedom of movement. and their lands were like dispossessed within within living memory. Right, you could talk to the people who were thrown out within living memory. So yeah, of course they're refugees. But okay, no documents of ethnic cleansing. This is a good one. I love this one. Right. So, if audience, you're familiar with Holocaust deniers, right? What is the central tenet? And I believe the Holocaust happened, so let me just put that out there, right? But what is the central tenet of Holocaust denial? Is that there is no document that exists that says, "Hey, yeah, exterminate the Jews," right? There is no smoking gun there. In other places where you have an ethnic cleansing campaign, like Serbia, there is no, as far as I know, there's no document that says, get rid of that population, right? That group that we don't like, wipe them off the map. No document, and so I guess we can't call it that. That would be that's literally the Holocaust denier's argument, right? That's like the central tenet of it because we can't find that document. But what we can do is we can put our thinking caps on. And so we can look at history, we can look at what was happening, and we can look at the definitions of ethnic cleansing, right? We can pull up some legal definitions if we want to, and we can just like match these things up, right? So you got a force that has come through, and, even before the big expelling, right? There was tensions brewing between the populations. Now, previously, before the whole Zionist movement, there were Muslims, Christians, and Jews living side by side within the Palestine area, right? Like they existed. Times changed when that movement started to come in and it started to shift to a settler colonial mindset, right? Well, just like all settler colonial examples we've seen everywhere, including here in the States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and other places maybe I'm not thinking about at this moment. But in all those cases, the idea forms that this population, this native population, they can't stay. This is ours now. And so there was more ethnic strife, right? There was violence on both sides happening. And eventually, with the population of Israel increasing and their armaments increasing, right? I'm like, well, we can actually just do this. We can get rid of them. And so they did. And so they cleansed the land of the ethnicity. They got rid of them and they took their lands. They're living there now, right? And then in the West Bank, you see them increasingly shrinking that land. That is the ethnic cleansing, right? So yeah, he's right. I can't produce a document, right? Or at least, if there is a document, Israel hasn't released that one. I wonder if that one got lost in the pile. But I'll stipulate that it doesn't even exist. There's no document. But when Israel gives its orders to its commanders to invade these villages, right? And do what you must, right? When there's a climate of hatred and bigotry, that these people must go, and then they're gone, and then you move into their homes. Yeah, that's ethnic cleansing. So I'll leave that there. And then the final thing, our friend PZH said that well, if everyone became Muslim, tomorrow, the conflict would be over. Maybe it would be over, right? Because then, if everyone converted within Israel, then there would be no political backing for a Jewish state, right? For Jews, where Jews have to demographically be superior, have superior numbers than any other group. And then they would have then they would have less reason to keep Palestinians from returning to their land, but not no reason. This is why I say maybe, right? But not no reason, because the brand new Muslims are still there, and if a Palestinian, right, an old Muslim, comes to the new Muslim and says, "Hey, you're living in my spot, right? Can I have it back?" We're going to have a problem. And so, going back to what I said before, this is a territorial dispute. It's a territorial dispute. If it's filled with brand new Muslims, and those brand new Muslims like their property, like the resources they have access to, and don't want to give that up, it's not good. Like Muslims fight other Muslims within that within that region, right? And Sunnis fight other Sunnis, and Shia fight other Shias, right? Because there's more to conflicts than religion. Please respond.
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit disappointed, I have to say. I would have liked to stay on topic, but I now have to go to pre-Israel something plus academic buzzwords like settler colonial and all that kind of nonsense. And I would really have liked to talk about the conflict right now, but I do have to gloss
well,
over.
then let's just ditch all that part of the conversation here.
Well,
So,
let me
Prime,
spend
well,
5.
I'm gonna, yeah, I'm gonna push it forward though, because we are kind of looping a little bit on these old topics. So just push it forward. Prime, why don't you simplify for us? Like what grounds precisely are you condemning the current invasion in Gaza on?
The massive disproportionate response. When Israel, when the October 7th attacks happened, what Israel certainly was entitled to do was to end that immediate threat, right? So we had, like Hamas militants within like Israel proper, and so clear them out, right? Push them all the way back to that wall, and uh, from there, uh, from there, what that response looks like, I think, can go in many different directions. You can go in the most brutal way, which is what Israel is doing, just like carpet bombing parts of Gaza. You can go in the most brutal way. You can be destroying. I think the number I heard was like 80% of residences in northern Gaza, or maybe it's just Gaza City. I don't know. Have been like destroyed. Right? You can go that direction, or you can. And not saying this would have happened, but you could have opened up negotiations. That's an option. That's an option, not a likely option. Not a likely option. I'm not pretending that it is, right? But I'm
Okay, so
saying that there's a
let's
spectrum of responses. I'm almost done. But there's just a spectrum of responses that could have happened, and Israel is choosing one of the most brutal responses. And so I condemn that. I condemn them cutting off access to resources like power, food, water, and medicines, and yeah.
Okay, so BZH, do you think it's disproportionate given that explanation?
I'll reply to the point. So firstly, there is no carpet bombing. No Western country has engaged in carpet bombing since the 60s. Every single missile has laser guided on it. So that's just a meme again. Basically, let me just paint a picture so you can understand if it's with regards to the bombing specifically, so you understand if it's proportionate or disproportionate. So firstly, we have to go back to the point that Israel is the world's most moral army according to a British study. And here's a statistic for that point. Any other country in the world, you'd have a 9-to-1 ratio between civilian and combatant deaths. Israel has, according to an example in this year in Jenin, they had a 0.6-to-1. So it's not the case that Israel is doing anything disproportionate based on the past record. In addition, specifically to missile strikes, every one of those there's a command center. Inside that command center, those missile sites get approved or not. There are military lawyers in those command centers. Then all the data gets bungled up and it gets sent to a civilian group that verifies if this was unjust or not. Just again, there's a calculation if it passes the international law. The Attorney General in Israel has to approve, or at least has to see, every missile strike. So each one of them is very, very litigious and regulated. With regards to the resources, so I want to make a point here. Israel provided in the past about 45% of Gaza's electricity. It provided 6 to 10% of Gaza's water. In a UN post in 2021, they said 90% of Gaza's water comes from aquifers inside of Gaza, some from desalination plants on their side, and the rest from Israel. Now, it is true that Israel provided up until the 7th of October free water to that degree, free electricity, and also free medical attention to people in Gaza for more serious conditions. There is no rule under international law that says Israel has to provide free stuff to people that want to kill it, want to destroy it. In fact, I would say it's morally abhorrent that Israel does that.
Let's avoid that part of it and just focus on the proportionality section here.
Well, I'm saying that it's abhorrent that Israel does those things. It strengthens a country that's trying to destroy it. It's not supposed. Israelis pay taxes for those stuff, and then in return for those taxes, they're getting killed. To me, that's morally abhorrent. Now, in particular, is the example of the medical attention. The current leader of Hamas inside Gaza, Sinwar, in the past went to Israel to get life-saving treatment for cancer. Israel keeps trying to play the nice guy and keeps trying to help everyone. No, we're better than the other side. I say you shouldn't have given that to Sinwar.
Okay, sorry. Sometimes I don't know where you're done, because you like take pauses, but that's fine. Okay. So, what did I just write down here? Israel. Oh yes, the bombs. That's where I was going with. The bombs. So I've seen pictures, sources that say Israel isn't just using like guided bombs to a precise target, but like I can't pull up right this second, so I'm just gonna leave that alone. But like just putting it out there, is Israel only using guided munitions? I can't say, and I certainly wouldn't simply trust the IDF's word on it, right? But I'll leave it there. But even if it's not, we can actually see the devastation when whole neighborhoods are destroyed. I guess we can say that under all of those spots, there must have been a Hamas command center. They have so many of those, right? There must have been a cache of weapons. There must have been a missile emplacement in all of those places, and in all those residences with those families. It simply must, or those hospitals, right? Those different hospitals, or that refugee camp that was bombed multiple times by the IDF. We can say that Hamas is just there, right? I don't believe that. Like IDF just says it, and I don't believe it. So I don't know, right? But even if that was the case, right? So let's say I give for everywhere that the land, every spot, even if it was like an open park, right? That there someone Hamas was there somehow. They must have buried an AK-47 in this open park, right? And it had to be bombed, right? Well, I reject the idea that it had to be bombed. I reject that this response is proportionate or legal or humane or moral or any of those things. I reject all of that. I reject collective punishment. because that's an illegal under international law. But the idea that this ethnic altogether is going to have to be punished for this, right? Like we can't. And this idea that Israel is giving these resources for free. Now I have no idea like how Gazan water bills work. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't have that level of detail on me. But when these people don't have access to fully don't have the space, don't have the access to the resources to be self-sufficient, right? Because they're not a state, because Israel won't let them be a state, right? Because when they don't have that ability to do so themselves, and they're reliant on this enemy territory, right? Yeah, then it does matter. Your actions matter here. Denying these resources, where the population was severely food deprived previously, right? But is now in a straight up crisis at this point. Yeah, that's it's a humanitarian disaster brought to you by the IDF. Absolutely. Um, but and again, you bring up this. I don't care if the IDF is the most moral, oppressive force in the world. Congratulations. We can give them a tiara, I suppose, but I don't care. I would probably dispute that, but it's like not an argument that I care about engaging. It's like pointless. We can see the destruction that's happening right this second. We can see entire families being wiped out. Like one family, 3 generations gone by the IDF.
So let's try to push this a little bit into a specific angle, and then I think I want to get to closing statements. So we have time for Q&A pretty soon.
Duke, we just started the topic. Really, just right now started the topic.
Sure. I mean, we're gonna have a little bit of time here to continue finishing it up. So I just want to have Prime answer this, and then you can kind of respond to both of these. So obviously, Prime, you think the current response is disproportionate. How do you think Israel should be responding differently than they are right now?
It's a tough question. So once again, I think they should have pushed Hamas back to the wall. That would be. I mean, you have to end the active threat to your people, so that had to happen. But beyond that, like, I think that if Hamas was acting, they were like firing rockets, that it makes sense to stop those particular rockets. But like in the end, there's no this conflict doesn't end without addressing the territorial claims, without a level of integration. So how do I want? There's the practical response, or the realistic, I should say, the realistic response that Israel is going to have, and that was just going to bomb them to a certain extent, right? Either as much as they have already or less than they have already. It was just to bomb, right? So that was like the realistic response to this awful attack that Hamas committed. But the one that will actually solve this problem is addressing those needs, the ability for people to return, ending the apartheid, especially within the West Bank. That the conflict simply will not end until we deal with the apartheid. Until that Israel, well, either we do a 2-state solution, which is not going to really happen.
Can I just try to simplify this so it's a little bit easier for the combo here? Can I simplify that as, at least for now, that the solution is to pull back from the settlements and try to pursue a 2-state solution? Is that enough of a similarity to what you're advocating for, to kind of keep this a little narrow?
Sure. It doesn't have to be a 2-state solution. It can be a one-state solution, but that would require that, and that was what I was about to say, that it would require Israel to no longer see itself as a Jewish state. So
Okay. Sure. So let's have PZH respond to that then, as the advocacy that Prime's talking about, roughly speaking.
I do need to respond to the previous comments, though, Duke, please.
Yes, if you can make it very quick, though.
Okay. So basically, if I can just summarize, Prime doesn't really understand the region at all, and it seems, and just to be generous, it seems to me that he's like applying problems in America and projecting them onto the region, and it's just not the case. And I have tried to explain why. Sincerely, I have tried to explain why, but I think we're just talking
and
over
I thank you for that. I
each
thank
other.
you.
Okay. So with regards to I'll start with the bombs comment. So if you don't believe or do believe, that is completely irrelevant. I already said that the whole procedure of shooting missiles is highly regulated, and I do say that there's intelligence sharing of what was done, if it was done accurately, if there was an issue with other countries as well. So everything is very, very transparent and very regulated. With regards to the example of Jablaya, that's actually a good case of what happened. There was a commander there, a very high-ranking commander. He was under the buildings there in the not refugee camp, like just residential dwellings. And they used the bunker buster, and the bunker buster went through the ground and exploded him, 50 of his men, and other rockets that were under the ground. The rockets were not known to Israel, but just to explain why it was good, the missile didn't explode at the top level where all the other people, which you could say are civilians, were. It exploded under the ground. But as a result, because there was such a lot of tunnels there, and because there were other rockets there, it kind of collapsed inwards, and the buildings around it got damaged. But it wasn't like an explosion on the ground itself. So that was a good example of that. I would say though that it's important to mention that just as a rule, Israel has more responsibility to protect the people of Israel. Hamas, and you've agreed to this already, Prime, has more responsibility to protect the people of Gaza. That's its role. That's why it was elected. That's its first and foremost thing to do. So if, for example, there are issues with food, there are issues with water, it needs to get into a situation where those things are available to its people. Israel isn't obligated to provide those things in any kind of international law or even morally. Hamas is responsible for those things. Now, with regards, just quickly moving forward, Duke, I promise. In regards to Israel being the most moral army, let's say this. You don't like the way that Israel is bombing the Gaza Strip. You want the UN to intervene, say, look, Israel, we don't like that you're bombing the way you're conducting yourself. We'll bring in our own army and we'll conduct it for you. We'll give you some guarantees and we'll do it for you. You just step aside. Which army would you prefer to do? American army? British army? Who would you like to handle this operation other than Israel, who insanely looks after other civilians more than Hamas itself does? It's not even a question. You keep ignoring this fact, but because you have all these conspiracy theories about what's going on and you project these things, but that's not what's happening on the ground. And I just like to end.
Okay,
I just like to end with the Prime is saying that he essentially wants the genocide of Israel in the following way. He doesn't want Hamas to be eliminated. He wants Hamas to come back a second time. That's against international laws. Israel is obligated to remove Hamas. And he wants Israel to not exist.
Advocacy.
He wants Israel
if I understand your argument correctly, you're taking way too long. If I understand your point correctly, you're saying that his advocacy, scaling back, pursuing something similar to a two-state solution, that will result in the inevitable destruction of Israel because they won't be able to defend themselves in the way they need to. Is that correct?
Well, Israel needs to remove the threat of genocide from its people.
Okay, and so that requires the method they're using right now?
Yeah, that's by far the best approach. But
so can you explain why, if they would not pursue that, if they were to scale back their approach, can you explain why that would result in their genocide or their destruction, whatever word you want to use?
Because Hamas is committed to destroy Israel. It's stated that many times. Everyone agrees on this.
Okay, maybe do you want to justify that more, or if not, I guess Prime can butt in.
It's in their charter. even the most hardcore left Israeli won't argue this point. None of the countries in the UN would argue this point. Hamas wants to destroy Israel. It's written as in black and white everywhere.
Okay. So first point that you made about like the bombing and the transparency of the IDF to the rest of the world, right? Basically, this comes down to if the IDF says so, then it must be true. I'm just like doing this rapid fire so we can get through this, but like I can understand as an outsider that there is a decades-long conflict, and there are interests on both sides, right? An interest that would make it so the truth might be secondary to accomplishing those interests, right? To achieving those goals. So, because the IDF says that, well, these are legitimate targets, that doesn't mean that I'm going to take their word for it. I'm sure some of them certainly are. Absolutely. Of course, they want to get rid of the legitimate targets, certainly as well, right? I get that. But to simply say, well, the IDF has been very transparent. Like, what? Yeah, the American government also tries to be transparent as well, right? It releases all kinds of documents in terms of its war making. That doesn't mean I'm just going to take them at face value. Same with Hamas, right? Like I said, Hamas released statements about like their goals for the October 7th attack and how it happened, and like, well, I can take that into consideration, but I'm not going to necessarily just believe you. IDF is no different. So I'll leave it there. But I don't understand this conflict. Now, I tried my best over years and months, and specifically the last few weeks, to get my head around this conflict. There's a lot of history, but there's also a lot of things happening right now in the present. And it's complex, without a doubt. But don't let them in general, like the other side, I give you this idea that, well, you can't wrap your head around this region. You can't understand. They make it feel like you have to have some sort of degree in Middle Eastern studies to properly get what's happening here. But it's actually quite simple. Bigotry, territorial disputes, right? Apartheid. Like these are the things that are happening. That the people are being denied their rights. That's the focus, right? We didn't really get to jump on that in this conversation, but like that really is the focus of this. You can wrap your head around that. You have enough context to get that much, right? You may not know exactly like the troop movements in 1948. You may not understand that, right? Or all the different wars that happened. True, right? Yeah. But you can get the injustice that's happening, and don't let that escape you. And finally, he asked me if like would I choose another military? Actually, I would. Yeah, I actually would. I wouldn't choose the American military, but if there was I don't know, maybe another European power possibly that could do this, I would actually trust them more than the IDF. The IDF that works hand in hand with the stealing of Palestinian lands, which uses human shields too. We didn't get to that point either, but I can talk about that later if you want. But they do use human shields. We literally have video of them doing that.
I want to say I want to say that because I completely deny that claim. That's bullshit and liable.
Libel. Oh wow,
100%.
There. Yeah, sure. I'll look, see if I can find that video. I think I have it saved.
Yeah, I want to see that video. And also,
sure.
Duke, regarding
specifically, it's just so you understand the context of the video that I'm looking for, and I'm gonna see if I can find it for you. But it's like they're clearing out, they're stealing more houses, right? They're clearing out a house, and they take like a Palestinian kid, the soldiers.
Look, I don't need your description. I want to see it, and I don't believe you because it never happened.
Okay, all right, okay, sure.
Let's not do the video right now. We can do that maybe perhaps post debate. Maybe hard to fetch it at this exact moment.
Duke, regarding
I'll try my best.
Well, since he can't provide it right now as well, we can sort of strike it from the record, so to speak. But it can be something that we can get to after this.
Duke, regarding to your previous,
try to stay on course.
Sorry, regarding to your previous point, Duke. Hamas has said, a leader of Hamas had said that they'll repeat the 7th of October again and again and again and again.
I'm sorry. Was that to me? I thought you
No,
were talking to Duke.
Duke was asked.
What did you say?
Duke asked me about can we justify that there will be a genocide, and I'm yes, they've said it, they've stated it, it's in their charter, and they've recently had an interview. One of the leaders of Hamas said they'll repeat the 7th of October over and over and over and over again. So it's a perfectly legit. I mean, it's not even for debate, really. I don't know why we're going over this. Is there anything else you'd like me to talk about, Duke?
I mean, it's up to you guys for how you want to push that forward. I'm trying to make sure it stays on track here.
I would still like to know. I haven't had an answer with regards to how is it that Hamas persuades the population of Gaza to become human shields or suicide bombers. Is he going to say it's because of territory? Because that doesn't make sense.
I don't know if they've convinced. Well, I mean, I'm sure that if Hamas uses suicide bombers, that I'll be able to convince them to be suicide bombers. But yeah, I think so. I think the answer you're going for, because you do this thing like asking me questions that you want a specific answer to, is really annoying. But like, I think the answer you're trying to drive me to is that they use religion, right? That there's like religion fanaticism that gets a person to say that I'm going to be a um I'll blow myself up
A
like in a
shahid?
marketplace or something, and that's and absolutely that which is absolutely the case. That's one of the reasons, I guess, but there's other reasons too. I mean, for instance, right now, like if hostilities ended, right, and Hamas was defeated, right, however that looks like, Hamas is defeated, there would be a lot more people looking to be suicide bombers. Once they watch their families get wiped out, Israel's creating more enemies. So they may not be Hamas proper or the Islamic jihadist group that's there, right? They might not be part of any individual group, but they'd be looking to kill Israelis. Absolutely, because this is how you radicalize people. But yeah.
Okay, and why won't the Israelis who had their families slaughtered by Hamas decide to be suicide bombers back?
I don't know if they need to be suicide bombers, right? Like you don't see like uh you rarely see I don't want to say never, right? But you rarely see people from the more dominant society, the more powerful society resorting to tactics like that. Why do they need to, right? They have a military to do that kind of violence for them.
Okay, let me
Like
let me
the
let me
this
rephrase the
like for
question.
instance the
Let me rephrase the question.
okay,
Why
sure.
don't you see Holocaust survivors or survivors of the Rwanda genocide become suicide bombers or terrorists to their oppressors?
Why I apologize. I was like listening to a video. Say it again.
Take two examples: Holocaust survivors and survivors of the Rwanda genocide in Africa. Why are they not similarly, as they've been oppressed, as they've been hurt, as they've been radicalized, uh, being suicide bombers or terrorists to their previous oppressors?
Um so with the Holocaust survivors, I mean, the state that attacked them is was gone, right? I mean, the German people were alive, but like, I don't know if there weren't like uh, German Jewish extremists who attacked back at the state. I don't know if that wasn't the case. I have no idea. I literally don't know.
Have you heard about it?
And I, that's why I don't know if that was the case, but like I said, the state, the Nazis were defeated by the time that was over. So, like, what would they be striking back against? Like, they literally the people that they were um, uh, that victimized them were on trial for the world to see. So there was justice happening, right? And Rwanda, there was reconciliation a process, like in South Africa, right? In South Africa, there was a reconciliation process that was happening, a public one, which helped tamp down on any retributive violence that happened. I'm saying that the Palestinians now, they don't have anything like that. They don't have a state, right? Either within their specific borders or within Israel that wants to reconcile the situation. There is no path to justice, and so that drives people to extremism.
I'm not aware of a lot of suicide bombers um, other than this part of the world. There has been studies on terrorists and suicide bombers, and you're saying that they're oppressed, but that's not necessarily the case, that those particular people that chose are in fact that. So Hamas, first of all, has a lot of people to choose from. It literally has to take applications about who works for it and who doesn't. Typically, the people who do work for it are above average income or above average economic status, above average education, and in particular, suicide bombers are extremely more educated. So, for example, if you take Al Qaeda and 9/11, you know, Osama bin Laden was very rich. The people that conducted the attack were well off, and it wasn't the case that they're oppressed at all. So this kind of like myth that this radicalizes, and it's not true unless you have another element that does persuade people to take this action of sacrificing yourself. And I would say it's religious, because then you have something to both. You both have something waiting for you in paradise, 72 dark-eyed virgins, and you know that the people will lionize you, and you'll be put into school books for kids because they have that in their school books. You'll be put in like pictures around Gaza that you've done this thing. Your parents will be proud of you. Do you remember if you saw the guy, the terrorist that said, "Mom and Dad, I killed 10 Israelis with my bare hands"? This is what I'm talking about. Like it's encouraged. They're being brainwashed to kill themselves because paradise is more. The next life is more important than this life. And they have a saying, which is why they're so hopeful to remove Israel. They have a saying: you cannot defeat someone who's hiding from death cannot defeat someone who's seeking death.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't. It's weird why you're fighting me on this. I don't really understand. So like I 100% agree that religion is part of it. Like I'm a atheist, right? And I'm atheist and I'm anti-religious. So if you want to give me an argument about how religion poisons the mind, yeah, I'm readily available for that. No problem. I get it, right? If you want to talk about uh, uh, the the abuses of extremist Islam, yeah, you can list them, and it'll be doubtful there'll be anything on your list that I'll disagree with. 100%, right? And if you want to talk about the abuses of Christianity and the Jewish religion, yeah, I'm there too, right? And so, like, I stipulate that that is indeed the case. That religion is a part of this, right? But specifically, when we're looking at this particular conflict, um, uh, there is no right to redress. There isn't like I, I can't live my life as a civilian and know that there is a force, right, that is fighting, that has a chance to um, fight this enemy for me, right? That when I'm victimized within a civilian, when I am a second class citizen within the land, there is no justice coming for me, right? When the IDF soldiers assist settlers and clearing out villages, or when they see violence and they don't respond to that violence, that radicalizes people. It simply is the case. Then like for instance, the U.S. created more enemies, more radical enemies during its bombing campaigns of Middle Eastern countries. When we killed innocent civilians and called them militants, yeah, that created an enemy. Now they could have looked at it through the lens of religion, right? That could have been the focus when someone was strapping on a bomb to them, but in the end, it's because they lost something, or they have a perceived loss, even that's not true, right? They perceive that they're under siege, and so this is how they respond.
No, this isn't true. I'm explaining to you over and over and over again that the reason that they're
Oh, you're
responding
explaining.
that
Thank
the
you.
reason that they're responding in this way is because of religious reasons. The fact that Israel is there is the problem. It's not, and in the case of Gaza, there are no settlers. Israel isn't there. Who is oppressing them? Who is second-class citizens? Like they have their own government. The Hamas collects taxes from them. Hamas is the police and the courts. Where do the people in the Gaza Strip get the motivation to become suicide bombers or human shields? Based on your
Because
based
they're
on your
second.
worldview,
Sorry.
based on your worldview, where are the
Okay.
people of Gaza?
Where
Where are they
the
getting the
people of
motivation
Gaza?
from? Sorry, because IDF is not there. Settlers are not there.
Yeah, but they still live in a.
What is it?
I brought up previously. Hold on. Let me say it. Then you'll find out. Right. I brought up previously how like the UN says by 2020 that Gaza will be unfit for human civilization.
Well, it's
Right. That there's a
2023. They're still
deterioration.
there, so I don't.
Yeah, yes. So by unfit, that meant they were going to drop dead, right? Or is it that they've reached a level of deprivation that is unfit for humans, where they're a level of deprivation of food, of access to medical care, of
Okay, I
other
understand.
resources for
I understand. Let me just
nourishment.
speed
Yeah.
this up. Let
So
me agree with you and speed this up.
don't speed it up. I'm still talking. Thank you. All right. So when these people are denied these things, when they're second class citizens, when they don't have freedom of movement, when even for the young ones, when they hear of the homeland that was stolen from them, right, during the ethnic cleansing campaign, yeah, that radicalizes them.
Right, so obviously the report saying people are going to drop dead in 2020 is nonsense because it's 2023 and we're having a
Because I didn't say that. Thank you.
wait. Obviously it's a exaggeration by some NGO to raise more money or something because it's not
The
happening.
UN.
UN what? UN Human Rights Watch, UN UNRWA.
Sure.
Which group? UNRWA? Yeah, so they're just making.
I'll put up the report.
Fine, they're just making the claim
You think I'm making it up?
I'm not saying you're making it up, but they are wrong.
Okay.
Obviously wrong.
Oh.
Everyone started this conflict saying there's no food, there's no water, everyone's going to die in like 3 days. It's 4 weeks now, and they seem to have food, have water, maybe less than before, and they have plenty of rockets that keep firing. And either way that you look at it, Hamas is responsible for these things. If they need water, if they need food, Hamas is responsible for those things. Now, the UN groups, they sent aid before. There was plenty of aid coming in to Gaza since forever. There's aid coming in now, but it's just a bit more difficult with Hamas trying to smuggling more weapons, smuggling rocket parts, or smuggle outside their own people inside ambulances so they can flee the country. But it's still their problem. You can't say that it's Israel's fault for their poverty or that they're unemployed. And even just to this particular point, Israel was helping out people in Gaza and the West Bank. It was issuing work permits, and obviously the people who were given work permits from Gaza, they got intelligence about the outside settlements that they provided SEPA in Iran. They had very, very detailed reports about the settlement, so not the settlements, the town, sorry. And Israel was making an effort, even though the political process was stalled, it was trying to have economic peace with Gaza and the West Bank. It was trying to improve their life. It's been doing so since 2018. It's trying to get people more work permits. It spent $100 million trying to skill up people in the West Bank and Gaza to have like workable skills inside Israel. It paid for those things. It was trying to improve the internet in the West Bank. It was doing all these things to have economic peace at the very least, even though Hamas were not interested in political peace. So there is you're just imagining here, and you're using this like claim by some kind of agency to just raise more money. It's just not the case on the ground. Just go look at TikTok and see day in the life of Gaza, about how people were enjoying life there.
All right, so I want
So,
to.
new.
Sorry, just really
I just
fast.
want to.
Yeah, no, I'll let you respond. Don't worry. So I just want to
Uh,
push this into our little bit of an end here, and then we're gonna do some Q&A. So, Prime, if you can first respond however you wish to PZH, and then after you do that, if you can give your closing statement on the topic, and then we'll switch back to PZH. PZH, you can respond to the part that Prime said quickly, and then we'll give closing statement from you as well. Okay, Prime, go ahead.
Sure, no problem. I'm just going to read from this article. I can find the exact report later, but safety report article from United Nations. The United Nations report says Gaza could be uninhabitable in less than 5 years if current economic trends continue. And this was in 2015. The report released Tuesday by the UN Conference on Trade and Development, that's the one, points to the 8 years economic blockade of Gaza, as well as the 3 wars between Israel and Palestinians there over the past 6 years. Last year's war displaced, 2014, displaced 500,000 people and left parts of Gaza destroyed. The war has effectively, this is in quotes, has effectively eliminated what was left of the middle class, sending almost all the population into destitution and dependence on international humanitarian aid, the new report says. Gaza's GDP dropped 15% last year, and unemployment reached a record high of 44%. 72% of households are food insecure. And there's more to the statement here, but that's like the heart that I want to respond to. That most of Gaza was food insecure beforehand, before the bomb started dropping. Yes, aid is trickling in. A tiny amount of aid is trickling in, not enough. But aid isn't indeed trickling in. Let's understand though that this these people are using like filthy water in parts of Gaza. I'm sure some parts of Gaza were better than others, right? Like these things aren't even; they never are, right? But for a large portion of their population, they were living in utter destitution. So let's just not forget that. All right. So I guess in response, 90 minutes isn't enough to have a conversation on Israel Palestine. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that 90 minutes just isn't enough? That I think, was it Zombie here, our friend, is correct that we were just beginning the topic, honestly. But that's just how this conversation goes. There's just so much to it. Um, I, I really wanted to there's a level of helplessness that is uh, that our Western audiences have been trained to feel, right? That this is some conflict that's just so wide and vast and impossible to understand. And what can I do? There's lots of things you can do. You can protest. We had one of the biggest protests in Washington D.C. ever, like just yesterday, um, uh, for a pro-Palestinian, pro-peace protest that was happening. Right, people were making demonstrations across this nation. Israel's grip is ending. Right, it's going to happen. This is just one point in a long timeline. Something we didn't even get to is like, what was the point of even, or what could have been the possible outcomes of this attack, right? Like, what are the goals, right? One is, stopping, making it difficult for Arab nations to move past the Palestinian question, right? That was one, but another one, and that's working at this point in time, is eliciting a response, a disproportionate response from Israel, mission accomplished, that gets sympathy throughout the world, because this is what Israel does in a lot faster time frame, right? This is just a scaled down version of what Israel usually does to these populations, right? Gaza and the West Bank. This is a problem that can be solved. It absolutely is. Israel Israel has created a second-class citizenry. It wants to be a democracy, but first and foremost, it wants to be a Jewish state, and that means non-Jews, especially Arabs, are not welcome and will be treated worse off. Focus on that. focus on the injustice of the matter. Contact your local congressman if you're here in the States, or your politician wherever you happen to be. Let them know that you want to end to this war, that you don't want your government supporting this genocide by the IDF. Yeah, leave it that and trying to a little bit of a hopeful note. Thank you.
Okay. And then PZH, you can clear up anything you wanted to from the other part, but try to keep it under a minute, and then you can move to a closing statement.
Yeah, I can answer quickly. So basically, with regards to the economic situation in Gaza, it's basically only Hamas to blame. Like if it didn't, it was responsible for the people in Gaza. Prime has agreed that it's their legitimate representation. I mean, legitimate to what the best it can be. I'm not saying he fully agreed, but he did state that in one way or another. So they could have built infrastructure instead of terror tunnels. They could have built commercial stuff. They could have built invested in their tourism industry. They could have done anything other than impoverish their own population. And once again, Israel is to blame and is on trial because Hamas did a bad job about improving the lives of its own people. Like, great. So that was my only point to that. And even I also mentioned that they were trying from a distance to improve the lives and give people like there was 18,000 permits given to people inside Gaza. There were 500,000 entries and exits to Gaza in 2023 before the 7th. So yeah, and people came, did work, got some money, went back, built a home, started a family. That was really helpful for people there. And now that's gone forever, well, for the foreseeable future. With regards to closing statements, I mean, I'm not American, so this whole memeing terminology, let's protest, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Israel is not going anywhere. Not only is it not going anywhere, but it seems to me like with the rise of anti-Semitism around the world, even in the country I'm in, a lot more Jews are going to emigrate to Israel now. At least after things clear down and and security has been established, I expect massive what's called aliyot to Israel because they're not safe in Europe, certainly where I am. And just like final statements, with regards to the 1940, I'm not going to comment on it, but I would recommend people watch a really good presentation by a very, very neutral historian called Benny Morris on the situation in the 1948, 1947. I would add there's a particular piece that's missing there, which is that there was a large part of the Arab population that were nomadic tribes, and nomadic tribes don't have land rights because they keep moving, so that's not included there. With regards to Israel is a democratic state. It's ethnically Jewish, not religiously Jewish. There are 20% of the population are Arab Israelis. They have full rights. They have they have representation in the Knesset. There's 12, 13 members who are Arab. They have the Supreme Court justices that are Arab. There's doctors, lawyers. They serve in the army. So I don't know what else to add to that. I would add just one last thing, if you would allow me, a joke to lighten the mood. If I can just find it. Basically, the way to bring peace to the Middle East, in my opinion, is for the average Palestinian to say, you know what? I don't think this whole martyrdom idea is very good, or that Islam needs to spread itself across the whole globe. How about I just make as much money as possible and live a good life? To which the average Jew would reply, did you say make as much money as possible? Now you're speaking my language.
All right.
I didn't laugh at that. I'm not going to laugh at that.
Interesting. All right. That'll do it for the debate proper. Thank you guys both for participating in this. Obviously, I agree. It's always never enough time to get through everything, but I'm glad we got to get through a few things. I put a straw poll in the chat. No ephemeral. I know what your third option is, and I will not include it. I hate you. I love you, but I hate you. We'll now do a few questions and comments from the audience here real quick. I'll try to do these rapid fire. Both speakers are limited to 30 seconds to responding to make sure that you are snappy. And we'll start with their super supporters as they have priority questions. First first question comes from Trader. It is for Prime. Trader wants to know if you've attended to any of the protests that you were talking about.
So yes, yeah, in my city. This was this like two weeks ago or something. There was a small protest in my particular city. Stopped by, I got pictures. Really nice. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Next question. We'll see, where was it? Here it is. It comes from Shooty Boy. It is also for Prime. If Israel is an ethno state, then why does it still have 1/4 of its population non-Jewish and allow non-Jews to immigrate to Israel?
Um. So it doesn't need to be 100% like one thing, right? Like, it simply needs to have political control. So it's one of the reasons why the ethnic cleansing happened in the very first place, and why they don't want to claim Gaza and parts of the West Banks, because then and give these people the access to the ballot box, because then they lose control of it. So it doesn't actually. It's fine if non-Jews or people who aren't ethnically Jewish come to their country, as long as they are firmly in control, which is what they are.
Okay. Next one. Let's see. Trying to find one hopefully for PZH. There we go. This one is from Kamikaze Chicken for PZH. Dahia Doctrine is a military strategy used in Lebanon in 2006 that explicitly employs disproportionate force. Would you condemn this doctrine? And if they're employing it in Gaza, the IDF?
I don't know what that is, but if the IDF is acting disproportionately, I would condemn it. Yes.
Okay. And also from Chicken for Prime, if Hamas and IDF got Freaky Friday, hopefully you understand that cultural reference, what do you think would happen?
Hell of a question. Thanks, I guess. I see. Okay, so it was actually
Yeah,
supposed
just
to be a
like
serious question. I get it.
swapped bodies.
I
Yeah.
get it. I get it now. It was a serious question. Okay, yeah, sure. If they swap bodies, I think a lot of the same. Does it also mean like swap the cultural context, like the minority was moving there as well, like rather than like an Arab majority in the region, a Jewish
Yeah, let me
majority?
have
Like if that was
I'll
the
have,
case,
go ahead, sorry.
well, if that was the case, right? If like the entire situation got swapped, then I would expect a lot of the same thing. Yeah, big Jews aren't especially bigoted. I don't think they're just human beings responding to incentives.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, it's from uni. It's a little bit off topic, I think, but it's still relevant to the topic at hand. Prime, do you think that the phrase "from the river to the sea" means destroying Israel?
Absolutely not. No. It's about uh, uh, giving freedom and uh, uh, land rights back to people, Palestinian individuals, from the river to the sea. Uh, I'm sure maybe someone somewhere has used it in that way as like a genocidal, like get rid of the Jews. But from everything that I've seen and how I see people use it, like within context, it's about giving rights back. Yeah.
Okay. Also to Prime from Dread Assassin, are you okay with Hamas existing? Shouldn't Hamas surrender so there is a chance for peace between Palestine and Israel?
I am fine with Hamas. Well, I don't want to say fine. Like I accept that Hamas exists, and another thing that we didn't get to is that, like, yeah, look at the West Bank, look at the Palestinian Authority. Look what happens when Palestinians roll over to the Israeli oppressors. Right? They have a straight up apartheid state. So I just accept that Hamas, especially when supported by Netanyahu, that Hamas is an inevitability, and people don't have other options. They're going to fight, unfortunately.
Okay. Next question is from Lightning. I think it's for PZH. Or I guess maybe both. So you can both answer this if you want. Does Hamas have a right to exist in the Gaza Strip? If so, why? And under what circumstances should terrorist organizations have a right to exist and continue to perpetuate terrorism?
Well, I don't think it has a right to exist. I think it would be better if it surrendered and left Gaza.
Okay, Prime, any different answer?
I don't think any military force has a quote unquote right to exist. It's not the way we should be looking at it. We should understand because I think it reduces this conflict to like a soundbite, yes or no, or anything like that. We can just look at the inevitabilities of when you create an environment with a certain set of incentives and disincentives. And so, yeah, there's an incentive for a militant arm to exist in this environment.
Okay. It's also from Lightning. Uh, it's addressed to Prime, but I am curious for both people to answer this question. What role, if any, does intent play when we evaluate whether something ought to be treated as a war crime? Does the pure number of civilian casualties ipso facto make an incident a war crime?
Yeah, so intent is important. So, for example, now you have Hamas committing an atrocity in Israel versus Israel defending itself. So, in that context, it is important. With regards to how many people died, I mean, there's like a video of Ben Shapiro discussing it, and it's not so much about numbers. There is like a utilitarian calculation now about numbers, but it doesn't mean that overall during the whole conflict, if one side has more deaths than the other, it doesn't mean that it's not done according to international law.
Okay. And Prime?
That's a really good question. I hadn't really thought about it before. Does intent matter when it comes to war crimes? I guess I would say yes. Um, like you can't use chemical weapons against populations, or like radiological weapons. But like if there was a massive like nuclear spill that happened from one of our plants into like Mexico, right? Our nuclear plants into Mexico, and it killed a fuck ton of people. The fact that we didn't intend to kill all those Mexicans, I think should factor in as to like not a war crime. But if we like took irradiated water and then like we poisoned their water source, then that would be something different.
Also, I would just
Okay.
add, mistakes some are not generally considered a war crime, but it depends.
Okay. Next one is from Anonymous to PZH. Can you please explain the concept that nomadic groups that operate within a specific region do not have land rights in any capacity? Additionally, do you not believe in right to return, given that you believe that people who are more than 2 generations removed from the land no longer have any claim to the land?
So I don't think that nomadic tribes have like property rights to the land if they keep moving and they don't settle on it. There have been some not so much nomadic tribes that did settle and they did have rights. An example in the U.S., where even the Supreme Court said that they have property rights and land rights, which I would agree with that as well. But in general, or like if you keep moving, then you don't own the area that you left. What was the second question?
Second one is additionally, do you not believe in the right to return, given that you believe that people who are more than 2 generations removed from the land no longer have any claim to the land?
So, right to return, or basically what's called diaspora rules, depends on the country. If they're allowed. So, Gaza and the West Bank have a right to return, or basically, if Palestinians want to return to that land, they'll probably be allowed to do that. Israel has diaspora rules for ethnically Jewish people, but so does Germany, Ireland, China. There are a variety of different countries that have return for the diaspora. I myself have German citizenship because of my grandfather having that right. Besides never living there, so it depends on the country, but it's not a sign that a country is an ethno state.
Okay. Next question is from Sample Text to PZH. Thoughts on Benny Netanyahu? Should he resign, and would you rather have any other leadership in the war right now?
So I'm not living I'm not living in Israel, and I haven't lived in a while. In fact, I had to do research for this debate just to get acquainted with some of the stuff. I don't think Netanyahu he should leave. Probably, I am upset at the state that Israel is in terms of its politics, because when I was still living there, we did used to have a left and a right. We did used to have the left and the right were like, kind of like the Democrats and the Republican, like some seats and you win the whole thing. Now the left is eviscerated. There used to be a far left party called Meretz. They don't exist anymore. It's basically right wing and center left at best. And to me, just from a distance, it seems like the left has been decimated because they didn't have an answer for the Palestinian problem. And I'm of the left, so they didn't have a good answer for how do you keep people safe, how do you keep people secure. Even people who are for Palestinian rights and are very leaning towards the left in this context would have to agree that there aren't too many options for them to keep them secure in terms of which political party can achieve that in Israel. And I think what's happening is that as a result of a left not existing, the right are becoming stronger and stronger. But I don't think it's the fault of the right. I think it's the fault of the left not having the right answers.
Okay.
I just like to address that first part. I don't know about like nomadic rights is an interesting question. Yeah. But I don't think this is contravening exactly what our friend PZH was trying to say. But I just want to make sure that we understand that there were plenty Palestinians, thousands of them, within villages, within actual settlements. Yeah. And they were urbanized as well, right? There were urban centers there. So I just want to establish that, but I don't think PZH disagrees with me there. So
Okay. And last question from Paul, similar line of the Benny question. This is also for PZH. He was also asking if you wanted to get rid of Netanyahu, but that part was answered. But then the second part of his question was if you would prefer to have the DN party in office in Israel instead.
I honestly don't even know who that is.
The D's Nuts party.
Okay. You got me. It could have legitimately been. It could have legitimately been. It could legitimately been an Israeli party. I wouldn't have known.
No. That's Paul's weekly question. He likes to get people on that. So don't worry, you're not the first, and you won't be the last. And our final, completely non-serious question that we also like to do, as is tradition, which is completely unrelated to the debate. This is for both of you. It's not a trick question. Question is, do you think it is more likely than not that somewhere in the universe right now there exists intelligent aliens defined as intelligent as humans or more intelligent than humans? More likely than not. So over 50%, yes or no?
I would say not.
PZH?
I would say not.
No? Okay. And Prime?
I would say definitely over 50%. That with the billions of planets out there, and life that may not look what we expect it to be, but might still be intelligent, right? Life could probably come in so many forms that we can't even imagine. Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, I would err on the side of optimism that it didn't just happen the one time here in this backwater galaxy that we have.
All right. Well, that'll end our debate. Thank you guys for both having a very fun one. If both of you want to, actually, first let's do this. Shout out to PrimeCayes. He does lots of streaming and YouTube videos and debates. And if you want to join his server and the partnership channel, you can see a link to his server. Plus, it has all of his YouTube, all of that stuff. And at PZH, if you want to do any kind of shout out or anything, I think you have a YouTube channel, right? You can link it in the chat if you'd like to.
Yeah, I've got a derelict YouTube channel that I occasionally upload to. But yeah, I'd like to do more debates in the future, basically. So maybe just keep an eye on me or something if you see me in the future.
Yep. And if either of you don't have to, but if either of you want to, we will be moving down to the voice channel chat below for a kind of post-debate discussion. So if you want to hang out there, talk to people, you can, but by no means are you obligated to if you have stuff to run to. So that's it for up here on stage. Prime, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first, I didn't have a partnership channel, but I've just created on my server, and
Sweet.
this server is now the first partnership with my server. So there
Awesome.
you go. I don't know. So shout out to once again, shout out to Duke, and shout out to PZH. This is, believe it or not, this is actually one by far one of the more respectful debates I've been involved with.
Thank you.
And and even if it wasn't though, I appreciate him engaging with me. And thanks to your audience for bothering to come listening.
Yeah, not a problem. All right. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed. And we'll see you all down in the post debate in the VC.
Thank you.
Okay.